Zack awoke with a start, his vision blurry and his mind foggy. As his surroundings came into focus, he realized he was not in his bedroom, but somewhere entirely unfamiliar. He found himself lying on a sleek, metallic table in a room filled with strange, glowing devices and screens displaying incomprehensible symbols. Disoriented, Zack tried to sit up, but a gentle hand pressed against his chest, urging him to lie back down. "Easy there," a melodic voice said. "You've been in cryogenic stasis for quite some time. Give your body a moment to adjust." Zack's eyes widened as he took in the speaker, a strikingly beautiful woman with luminous blue skin, silver hair, and eyes that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly light. She was clearly not human. "Where am I?" Zack croaked, his throat dry from disuse. "Who are you? What's going on?" The alien woman smiled reassuringly. "I am Captain Area of the Starship Celestia. You are safe here, Zack. We mean you no harm." "How do you know my name?" Zack asked, alarmed. Aria's expression turned somber. "We know a great deal about you, Zack. You are special. Quite possibly the most important human in the galaxy right now." Zack shook his head in disbelief. "I don't understand. The last thing I remember is going to sleep in my own bed, on Earth. How did I get here?" Aria hesitated, as if searching for the right words. "Zack, I'm afraid Earth is not as you remember it. Something has happened, a global catastrophe. You may be the last human male alive." Zack felt like he'd been punched in the gut. "What? How? What kind of catastrophe?" "A genetically engineered virus," Aria explained grimly. "It targets the Y chromosome, rapidly altering the DNA of any organism that carries it. Within a matter of hours, every male on Earth, human and animal alike, had been transformed into plant life." Zack couldn't wrap his mind around it. His father, his brother, his best friends, all gone. Transformed into plants. It seemed like a ridiculous sci-fi movie plot, not reality. "But how did I survive?" Zack asked, dreading the answer. "We don't know," Aria admitted, "but your immunity to the virus is the very reason we brought you here. Zack, you may hold the key to saving not just humanity, but countless other species across the galaxy threatened by this virus. We need your help." Zack let out a shaky breath, his mind reeling. The weight of Aria's words settled over him like a suffocating blanket. The last man on Earth, and the fate of the galaxy resting on his shoulders. He looked up at Aria, seeing the desperate hope in her shimmering eyes. He didn't know if he could be the savior she seemed to think he was, but he knew he had to try. "All right," Zack said, his voice steadying with resolve. "Tell me what I need to do." As Zack regained his strength, Captain Aria gave him a tour of the Celestia. The ship was a marvel of advanced technology, every surface sleek and gleaming, with holographic displays and automated systems that responded to a mere gesture or vocal command. But what struck Zack most was the crew. Every member was female, with a dizzying array of alien features, scales, horns, tails, and skin colors ranging from pale lavender to deep indigo. They regarded Zack with a mix of curiosity, awe, and something else he couldn't quite place. "We are the Asari," Aria explained, noting Zack's bewildered expression. "An all-female species. We reproduce through a form of parthenogenesis, with occasional genetic input from other species to maintain diversity." She led Zack into a sprawling laboratory where a statuesque alien with iridescent green skin was bent over a bubbling beaker. "This is Lyra, our chief geneticist. She's been analyzing your DNA to try and understand your immunity." Lyra looked up, her cat-like eyes widening as she took in Zack. "Fascinating," she breathed, approaching him with a scanner. "Your genetic structure is unlike anything I've seen. The virus is present, but inert, as if your cells have developed a natural defense." Zack shifted uncomfortably under Lyra's intense scrutiny. "Can you use that to create a cure? To save Earth?" Lyra's expression turned troubled. I don't know. The mutation is complex, tied to specific sequences we can't yet replicate. It will take time to untangle it all. Just then, the lab door slid open, and another Asari strode in, this one with fiery red skin and an air of authority. "Time may be a luxury we don't have," she said sharply. Arya tensed. "Zach, meet Counselor Valara. She represents a faction who believe we should focus our efforts not on a cure, but on repopulation." Zach's stomach dropped as he understood her meaning. Valara eyed him like a prime cut of meat. "The Asari have not had a viable male mate for generations," Valara said bluntly. "Your arrival is an opportunity we cannot squander on chasing hypothetical cures." "But we can't just abandon Earth," Zach protested. "All the other planets threatened by this virus." "Planets come and go," Valara shrugged. "Species rise and fall. The Asari must endure. And you, human, may be our best hope for that." Arya stepped between Valara and Zach. "This is not a decision to be made lightly, Counselor. We will continue to study all possible angles." Valara's eyes narrowed, but she nodded curtly and left. Arya turned to Zach, her expression grave. "I am sorry you had to witness that. The virus has us all on edge. But I promise, I will not let them treat you as a mere commodity." Zach nodded, but couldn't shake the chill that had settled over him, the weight of an entire species' future looming over him. "Captain," Lyra called from her console, her voice tight. "I found something in the historical archives, something about the origins of the virus." Arya hurried over, Zach close behind. On Lyra's screen was an ancient depiction of two alien factions locked in battle, and between them, "That's the molecular structure of the virus," Zach realized with a shock. Arya's face was grim. This was no natural plague. It was a weapon, a doomsday device from a long-forgotten war, now unleashed upon the galaxy once again. The revelation about the virus weighed heavily on the crew as the Celestia raced toward the Asari homeworld. Arya hoped that the ancient ruins there might hold more clues about the origins of the virus and how it might be stopped. As they made planetfall, Zach couldn't help but marvel at the alien landscape, towering crystal spires, glittering beneath twin suns, vast fields of bioluminescent flowers undulating in the perpetual twilight. But there was a melancholy to its beauty, a sense of a once great civilization now crumbling into memory. Arya led Zach and Lyra into a cavernous structure that seemed grown rather than built, its walls pulsing with an organic luminescence. "The Hall of Records," she explained, "the collected knowledge of the Asari, dating back millions of years." As they delved deeper, Zach began to notice something strange. The images on the walls, the statues, the writings, they seemed to shift and change before his eyes, forming patterns that spoke to something deep within him. It was as if the very fabric of the hall was reacting to his presence. Lyra ran her scanner over the wall, her eyes widening. These energetic fluctuations, they're resonating with Zach's genetic signature. Almost like the hall recognizes me," Zach finished, placing his hand on a large central crystal. At his touch, the entire chamber came alive with light and sound. A holographic figure coalesced before them, an ancient Asari, her face lined with wisdom and sorrow. "If you are seeing this," she began, "then the unthinkable has come to pass. The Charon plague has been unleashed once more upon the galaxy." She went on to explain how, eons ago, a rogue faction of Asari geneticists had created the virus as a weapon of last resort in a devastating war. But before it could be deployed, one of their own, a scientist named Xena, had rebelled against them. In the chaos, the virus had been released prematurely and imperfectly, ravaging both sides and ending the war in mutually assured destruction. But Xena did not give up, the hologram continued. She labored in secret to create a cure, a way to undo the plague she had helped create. And though she could not perfect it in her lifetime, she encoded the key to it within her very genes, to be passed down to her offspring in the hope that one day they might finish her work and save us all. The figure turned, seeming to look directly at Zach. "You, child of Xena, You carry within you the legacy of both destroyer and savior. Only you can end what she began so long ago. With that, the hologram flickered out, replaced by a swirling star map. A single system pulsed red at its center, the coordinates for Zena's lost laboratory, and with it, perhaps the secret to creating the cure. As the gravity of this revelation sank in, a proximity alert blared through the hall. Aria checked her comm, her face grim. "It's Valara. She's traced us here, and she's not alone. We need to go now." The trio raced back to the Celestia, but as they broke atmosphere, they found their path blocked by a fleet of Asari warships. Valara's face filled their view screen, twisted in fury. "Did you really think you could keep the human from us, Aria?" she snarled. "Hand him over and the cure, and your crew may yet be spared." Zack looked to Aria, saw the resolve hardening in her eyes. She would not give in, even if it meant war with her own kind. The battle for the fate of the galaxy had begun, and Zack was at its center, a human cast adrift in a sea of stars, carrying the weight of an alien world on his shoulders. The Celestia shuddered under the onslaught of Valara's forces, its shields straining to absorb the barrage of plasma fire. Aria's hands flew over the controls, her face set in grim determination as she wove the ship through the chaos of battle. "We need to get to Zena's lab," she gritted out, banking hard to avoid a missile salvo. "It's our only chance of finding a cure, of stopping this madness." Zack gripped the arms of his seat, his heart pounding. Just a few days ago, his biggest concern had been making rent. Now he was caught in the crossfire of an alien war, the fate of countless worlds hanging in the balance. With a burst of speed, the Celestia broke free of the engagement, jumping to light speed just as Valara's flagship loomed into view. But they knew they hadn't seen the last of her. She would pursue them to the ends of the universe to get her hands on Zack and the cure. As they hurtled through the swirling vortex of hyperspace, Lyra pored over the star map recovered from the Hall of Records. "Zena's laboratory is located on a remote volcanic world," she explained, "in a system with a highly unstable star. The conditions there are supposedly perfect for synthesizing the cure, but also incredibly dangerous," Aria finished grimly. "The star's radiation could cook us alive if our shields fail, and the planet's surface is a minefield of active volcanoes and seismic instability." "Perfect," Zack muttered. "As if we didn't have enough to worry about with the homicidal space Amazons on our tail." Aria laid a comforting hand on Zack's shoulder. "We will face these trials as we have all the others, together." As the Celestia dropped out of hyperspace above the roiling inferno of a planet, Zack couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. Rivers of molten lava crisscrossed the surface, glowing a vivid, malevolent red. Curtains of ash and embers drifted through the atmosphere, painting the sky in hues of bruised purple and sickly orange. They landed at the base of a jagged obsidian mountain, its peak lost in swirling clouds of toxic gas. According to the map, Zena's lab was hidden deep within a network of lava tubes that honeycombed the mountain's core, a natural fortress against prying eyes and the planet's cruel environment. Armed with breathing gear and heat-resistant suits, Zack, Aria, and Lyra set out into the noxious, sweltering landscape. The ground trembled beneath their feet with the restless churning of the planet's molten heart, and geysers of scalding steam erupted from fissures all around them. As they descended deeper into the mountain, the tunnels narrowed and twisted, the air growing thick and oppressive. Zack's suit clung to him like a second skin, drenched in sweat, every breath a labored gasp of recycled air. Just when he thought he couldn't go on, they stumbled into a vast, cathedral-like cavern. At its center, illuminated by the hellish glow of a river of lava, stood a complex of gleaming metal and glass, Zena's laboratory, untouched by the eons. But as they approached, a sound like thunder filled the chamber. The lava below them surged and roiled, and from its fiery depths emerged a monstrous creature, a serpentine beast of living magma and obsidian scales, its eyes burning with ancient malice. "A guardian," left to protect the secrets of the lab, and it stood between them and their only hope of salvation. Zack looked to Arya and Lyra, saw the fear and determination warring in their eyes. They had come too far to turn back now. For Earth, for the Asari, for every world under the shadow of the Charon plague. With a war cry on their lips, they charged to meet their destiny, the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance. With the Lava Guardian defeated and the cure's synthesis underway, Zack, Arya, and Lyra returned to the Celestia, battered but triumphant. But their elation was short-lived. Upon docking at the Asari homeworld, they were immediately surrounded by Valara's forces. "Counselor Valara," Arya began, stepping forward with an air of forced calm. "We have done it. The cure is within our grasp. Surely now we can put aside our differences and work together to distribute it, to heal what has been broken." But Valara's face remained a mask of cold fury. "You have stolen our future, Captain," she spat. "The human was our best hope for survival, and you squandered that for some misguided sense of altruism." She turned to her guards. "Seize them," she ordered, "and secure the human. The council will decide his fate." Zack found himself roughly separated from Arya and Lyra, each dragged off in a different direction. He was brought before the Asari High Council, a gathering of stern-faced matriarchs who regarded him with a mix of fear, disdain, and desperate hunger. For hours they interrogated him, debating amongst themselves. Some argued for immediate dissemination of the cure, others for using Zack to breed a new generation of Asari first. Still others called for his execution, seeing him as a threat to their way of life. But as the hours stretched into days, doubts began to creep in. The council kept him sequestered, isolated from any news of the outside world. For all he knew, Arya and Lyra had been imprisoned, or worse. As despair threatened to overwhelm him, the door to his cell slid open. Zack leaped to his feet, hope surging in his chest, only to be met with a cold smirk of Counselor Valara. "Your friends have abandoned you, human," she purred, stalking forward. "They've seen the wisdom of the council's plan. Arya herself has agreed to oversee the breeding program." Zack recoiled, his heart constricting. "You're lying," he snarled. "Arya would never agree to that. She fights for what's right, not what's easy." Valara's smirk widened. "Does she? Then where is she? Face it, Zack. You're alone, nothing more than a means to an end, but it doesn't have to be a painful one." She pressed herself against him, her breath hot on his neck. Zack shuddered, revulsion and fear warring within him. Just then, an explosion rocked the complex. Alarms blared as shouts and weapons fire echoed from beyond the cell. Valara whirled, her face contorted in rage. "What have you done?" she screamed. The door blasted inward, revealing Arya and Lyra, battered but determined, an army of loyal Asari at their backs. "Zack," Arya called, tossing him a plasma rifle. "The cure's ready. We're getting you out of here." Zack caught the gun, a fierce grin spitting his face. He turned to Valara, who cowered back, all pretense of seduction forgotten. "Looks like you underestimated us," he said coldly. "All of us." With that, he joined Arya and Lyra, and together, they fought their way out of the council's clutches, the first vials of the cure clutched tight in their hands. But even as they blasted into orbit, they knew their struggle was far from over. Valara and her supporters would not let this defeat stand. The battle for the fate of the Asari and the galaxy was only just beginning. In the days that followed, a tense stalemate gripped the Asari homeworld. Arya and her allies worked tirelessly to mass produce and distribute the cure, while Valara rallied her forces, stoking fear and mistrust among the population. Zack found himself at the center of a media firestorm, his face plastered across every newscast and holofeed. To some, he was a savior, the key to their salvation. To others, a threat to their way of life, a reminder of their own vulnerability. As tensions mounted, Zack knew something had to give, and so with a heavy heart, he called for a summit, a meeting of all factions, to decide the fate of the cure and of his own future. The great debate hall was packed to the rafters, a sorry of all colors and creeds filling the seats. Valaura and her supporters took one side, Aria and hers the other, and in the middle, standing alone, was Zack. "I came to you as a stranger," he began, his voice echoing in the charged silence. "A lost soul, adrift in a galaxy I never knew existed. You saved me, healed me, and in turn, I offered what gifts I had to save you." He held up a vial of the cure, glittering in the light. "This is the product of our shared labors. Aria's courage, Lyra's brilliance, the sacrifices of countless others. It belongs to all of us, not as a bargaining chip or a political pawn, but as a symbol of hope, of unity." Valaura surged to her feet. "And what of our future?" she challenged. "What use is a cure if our species fades into memory? The human is our last, best hope for survival. To give him up is to embrace extinction." Zack met her gaze steadily. "I am not a commodity to be hoarded or fought over. My gift to you is freely given, but not myself. I am a living being, with hopes and dreams of my own. To use me as a mere means of reproduction would make you no better than the virus you seek to defeat, a force of destruction, not creation." He turned to the crowd, his voice rising. "But I also understand your fears, your desperation, and I offer you a choice." From his pocket, he drew a second vial, filled with a swirling, luminescent liquid. "In my time here, I've learned much about your genetic sciences. With Lyra's help, I've created this. A vector that will rewrite Asari DNA, allowing you to reproduce with one another, to create new life without the need for other species." A ripple of shock ran through the hall. Valaura stared at the vial, her expression unreadable. "I'll offer you this, freely and without condition," Zack continued. "As a gesture of trust and of hope, the choice is yours, to cling to the old ways or to forge a new path. But know that whichever you choose, I will stand with you, not as a prisoner or a prize, but as a friend, an ally in the fight for survival." In the end, the vote was close but clear. The Asari chose a new way forward. Valaura and her hardliners were exiled, left to make their own way among the stars, and the cure was distributed far and wide, to every world touched by the Charon plague. For Zack, it was a bittersweet victory. Earth was saved, but forever changed. The once lush, green planet was now a patchwork of forests and gardens, tended by the botanical descendants of humanity. In a way, it was beautiful, a world in harmony, no longer divided by lines of gender or species. But for a man out of time, it could never truly be home again. And so, with a heavy heart but a spirit unbroken, Zack turned his eyes once more to the stars. There was still so much to explore, to discover. A galaxy full of wonders and dangers and friends he had yet to meet. The last human set forth into the vast unknown, the legacy of a lost world and the promise of a new one guiding his path. A wanderer, an explorer, a builder of bridges between stars. And though the journey ahead was long and uncertain, one thing was sure: it would be an adventure like no other.